Fine. Okay, are we ready?
Yes, I'm recording.
Okay, so this week, Rabbi, as you all know, is Parshas Tazriya מצורע. And we know the Gemara tells us in many places, in more in Erech, Tezayin, Amud Beis, that Negoim come as a result of a variety of Averis, of which most famously Lashon Hara is one of those Averis. Gasus Haruach, haughtiness, is another one of those Averis. Tzoras Ayin, being stingy. The whole list of things that as a result of the tzaras comes. Now, I'm sure that all of you know by now that tzaras is, even though it's translated as leprosy, it's not leprosy. Leprosy is a physical disease. It's a terrible, debilitating disease, and they probably still have in primitive places in the world leper columns, colonies that they don't let. It's a terrible, terrible disease. Tzaras is not leprosy. Tzaras is a machla ruchni. It is a spiritual malady which manifests itself in a physical malady. And as the Rambam writes at the end of Hilchas Tumas Tzaras, it is a nes nigla that Rebbeinu Shalom, and this is a chesed that Rebbeinu Shalom does to Klal Yisrael, as hard as that is to imagine. But Rebbeinu Shalom is telling us that we're doing something wrong. And it is the job of the Kayin to go ahead and to tell, or the Navi to tell the person what he's doing wrong in the process that he has to go through. Now here we are, Rabbi Isai, in the midst of this coronavirus, this pandemic, this Magefa, and everybody is always wondering, what is this about? What is this for? And this is one of the great tragedies of our lives, that we don't have a Navi to tell us what exactly we're doing wrong. So we have to grope around in the back, in the dark, and try to figure out what is it that we can improve. But be that as it may, the Pasuk says that when a person has tzaras, the Pasuk writes, "V'ro'u ha'kohen v'timei Isai," that the kohen takes a look at the person and it determines whether it's a tzaras, whether it's a nega, whether he has to be temporarily quarantined, or he has to be quarantined until the tzaras heals. But it's all up to the kohen. So there's a very interesting Teres Kehanim that writes and says that if the kohen is a shaita, that's the lashon of the Teres Kehanim. If the kohen is a shaita, which is translated, as you all know, shaita is another word. The technical word is a person that's mentally deficient. I don't know if they use the word today, but the person's an idiot. But in parlance, shaita is also referred to as a fool. So the Teres Kehanim writes, and he says that if the kohen is a kohen shaita, Yisrael Tamachacham Royas Hanegoyim Va'omer LeKohen HaShaita Emor Tamei V'hu Tamei Emor Tohar V'hu Tohar. The Teres Kehanim says that if you have such a person who's a shaita, kohen shaita, so he doesn't know one thing from the other. He doesn't know Torah from eczema, or whatever it may be. So what does he do? Says the Teres Kehanim, he goes to a Talmid Chacham, person that knows Masechta Negoim and Hilchos Negoim. The Talmid Chacham looks at the nega, and he says to the kohen, Emor Tamei. He says to the kohen, say the word Tamei. Kohen says Tamei, he's Tamei. Emor Tohar, say the word Tohar, he's Tohar. Which means even though the kohen doesn't know this, doesn't really know anything, and the Talmid Chacham cannot say what this is. Gzeres HaKosov, that the Torah says the kohen says the word Tamei, it's Tamei. He says Tar, it's Tar. Whatever he's told to say. So the Rashivas Atzal Rav Ruderman always used to quote this Teres Kehanim, and he used to say that one of the lessons over here is that the person, if one of the things that Negoim is coming for is for Lashon Hara, so if the kohen, if the person speaks Lashon Hara, he does not appreciate the power of speech. And as we all know this, as much as a few words can go ahead and can ruin people's lives. It can ruin shidduchim, it can ruin business partnerships, it can ruin marriages with the power of speech. So the person who speaks Lashon Hara does not realize the power of his words, and therefore to bring home the message, the Rosh Yeshiva used to say, this is why they're this halacha. The kohen doesn't know nothing, but it's the kohen that has to pronounce the word. So if that's not an example and a lesson of the importance and the power of words, then nothing is. So that's part of the reason by it. But the point that I want to focus on this morning or this afternoon, as the case may be, and I just may add that I'm very, very pleased that there are 26 people at least that are joining this year, which is better than what we had Friday morning in the yeshiva.
34, and without donuts.
34, I'm telling you, wow, okay. Kanai Nahara. And by the way, I just want to...
Who's going without donuts?
At least some good has come from this.
So I just want to point out, Rabbi Say, that I'm speaking in 4 different time zones. I'm speaking in East Coast time, speaking on the West Coast, which is 3 hours behind. I'm speaking in Brazil, which is an hour ahead. I'm speaking in Mexico and in Panama, which is an hour behind. So this is four hours that I'm speaking in, 4 time zones. So I saw a very interesting ha'ara from Rav Baruch Sorotskin Zecher Tzadik Livracha, who was the Telzer Rosh Yeshiva in the 60s and the 70s. And Rav Baruch, this is a very, very obvious question. There is a word in Talmudic literature, in Talmudic nomenclature, to describe a person that doesn't know anything. He's called an amoretz. Doesn't know anything, he's an ignoramus. So therefore, the proper lashon that we should refer to this kohen that doesn't know Hilchos Negoyim is to call him kohen amoretz. If the kohen amoretz doesn't know what to do, doesn't know Hilchos Negoyim, he gets a Talmud Chacham, the kohen Chacham, the Talmud Chacham tells him what to do, and the kohen, who's the amoretz, says Tomei or Tohor. Why does the Teiras Kehanim refer to the kohen as a kohen shaita? A shaita is a fool. He's not a fool. He may not be a learned person. He may be a ignoramus, but he's not a fool. By the way, Moshe Chaim, is there any reason that I'm staring at Avrami Pollock? Not that I have anything against him, but why is he on the screen?
There's
Because
a way
he's the
to...
only one with...
Well, there's a way to make it into a different view, but it's only if the last person that talks shows up on your screen if you're on speaker view.
I think it's because he's the only one with his camera on.
Okay.
I have my camera on too.
Well, now you do.
Okay.
I did before too.
I guess I'm a narcissist because I like looking at myself and not looking at anybody else, unless I had everybody to look at. But okay, let's get back to the subject. You hear the Starka Kasha. Why is he referred to as a kohen shaita, a foolish kohen? He should be referred to as a kohen amoretz. So the Mechilta says in Parshas B'Shalach, Lo nitna Torah lidreish elo la'oichle hamon, v'shnayim lahem la'oichle truma. That the Torah, Rabbi said, was given in Har Sinai, and it was given to Oichle Hamon, the people that ate the Mon. That's all they had for 40 years. And a second madrega is that Torah was given to Darshan, to Oichle Truma, which are the Kehanim. Question is, what does that medrash mean? What does that Mechilta mean? Why was Torah given to the Oichle Hamon and the secondary stage to the Oichle Truma? The answer, the pshat in that medrash is that Bemis and Rabbi Sai, it would be best if we be able to learn all day long. But the problem is there's something called parnasa, and that a person has to make a parnasa. And as you recall, Rabbi Isai, from the second Amid of Perek Kitz and Mevorchen, that the Torah itself says, Hanig B'em Dinik Derech Eretz. A person has an obligation to make a parnasa, and he has to spend his time making a parnasa. And that what takes up, Rabbi Isai, most of Klal Yisrael's time. Whatever it is, 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, unfortunately sometimes even longer, to eke out a living. Now the Torah said, V'asafta deganecha, this is what you have to do. And for those of you who are listening, you bochrim, maybe you don't have to make a parnasa yet, but many of you have to go to college, which is a tirda, which is a distraction. So we don't have the time basically to learn the entire day. Because Nebuch, we have to make a parnasa. There was one generation in the history of Klal Yisrael that did not have that problem. And that is the Oichle Hamon. They did not have to worry about parnasa. Their food and water was taken care of. Simlas choloi volso me'olecha. Their clothes did not wear out. They did not have to worry about utility bills because the Anani HaKavod was comfort, was climate control throughout their whole sojourn in the Midbar. So there's no food expenses, there's no clothes expenses, there's no utility expenses. So what were they supposed to do all day? The answer is, I say, they were supposed to learn all day because they did not have the daiga of parnas. And that's what the Medrash means, that le'nitna Torah lidraish ela'echle hamon, because they had their free time. Now, who else is like that? So, Bisman Shabbeis Hamini Yeshaya Kaim Rabbi Isai, all Kehanim, they were supported by the Kehila. Their Chof Dalad Matnas Kahuna, 24 types of matanas that we have to give to the Kain, including Truma. So Kehanim also don't have to worry about making a living, because they're provided for. They're provided for with the Trumas and Truma Gedolah. They're provided with the carbonites, steaks, food, etc. So therefore, Leinit Latera also Oichle Truma, because when you don't have to worry about Parnasa, you're a Kayin, you're supported by the community. And the reason the Torah did this is because the Torah wanted the Kehanim to be the Moirei Hara of Klal Yisrael, the teachers of Klal Yisrael. Yeru Mishpatecha L'Yaakov V'Sareschol Yisrael. So that's the Kain's job. The Kain's job was to be able to sit and learn, to speak with people, to learn with people, to give people Hara, because I don't have to worry about Parnasa. You know, there's stakes every time a person bought a Korban Shlomim. There was, I have to get a certain portion of it. A person bought a Korban Chatas. The Yisrael can't even eat the Chatas. It's Kachim. So they had the Lachmei Torah. They had the bread, they had the meat, they had the Truma, they had the grains. They had all. So therefore, they had time to learn. So therefore, now it says Reb Baruch, we can understand what it means that this Kayin is a Kayin Shaita. Why don't you know Hilchas Negoyim? Why don't you learn Masechta Negoyim? What do you mean you don't know? Because you didn't learn? Why didn't you learn? You had all the time in the world to learn. And a person who has the ability and the time to be able to learn and doesn't learn, that's not merely an amoretz. That's a shaita. That's a fool. Because you have all this time on your hands, and what are you doing with it? And the worst type of theft, Rabbi Isai, is stealing of time. And therefore, that's why the Chazal referred to this Kayin who doesn't know how to paskin a nega as a Kayin Shaita. Not merely an Amoritz, but he's a fool, because he has the time on his hands, and he has the ability, and he doesn't have the worries of Parnasa. Therefore, a person who doesn't take advantage of that is what's called a Kayin Shaita. one does not have to be a tremendous genius to figure out the implications for the situation that we find ourselves in. One of the big problems that most of society has to deal with at this point, who are stuck at home and who cannot work from home and who cannot go out, one of the major problems is boredom. People are bored. What are they supposed to do with their time? And that Rabbi Say can apply to the Umas HaOlam, to the Akum. But for a Yid, this is a mamash, an opportunity that he may never get the rest of his life, and that is, I can't work, I can't go out, so what should I do? So learn. In Masechta Shabbos, I'm not a Daf Yomi person, but when the Daf Yomi started Masechta Shabbos, there are parts of Shabbos that I really haven't learned, so I started learning the Daf Yomi. Now, whether I'm going to keep it up for the rest of Shas, I don't know. But when I sit there on Pesach afternoon, and it's such a long day, and I say to myself, thank God I have the Daf Yomi. I'm able to be Maver Seder properly. I prepare Shiur. But without the Daf Yomi, there would be large periods of time that I don't know what I would do with my time. And I hope that all of you are taking advantage of this. I mean, besides coming to Shiur and preparing, but Mamish, even if you have school, but you're doing it remotely, you're doing it online, you don't have to travel. Rabbi Say, we don't want to be told at the end of our lives that we were shaitim, that we were fools, that we were idiots. We didn't take advantage of this time. That, Rabbi Say, is the first ha'orah that I want to say. The second ha'orah, Rabbi Say, is a ha'orah on the haftarah of one of these parshas. I think it's Tazriya. Very interesting ha'orah, also from Rabbi Baruch Sorotskin. Naaman was the Sartsova of Melech Aram. And Aram, Rabbi Say, at that time was a very mighty, powerful nation, dominated its neighbors, including Klal Yisrael. So the Naaman was the Sartsova of Melech Aram. You can look up the Haftarah. And he was the Sartsova, which means he was the chief of staff. I guess he was the equivalent, Rabbi Say, of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The chief military officer of the United States is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and every nation has, the top military guy. So Naaman was the Sartsova Melech Aram, powerful nation, and he's the military guy, top guy, and he gets tsaras. And he's, nothing helps. He goes to every doctor in Aram, and no one can cure him of his tsaras. The reason no one can cure him of his tsaras is because tsaras is a machla that comes as for a spiritual malady, not a physical malady. So finally, somebody tells him that there's a Navi, that there's a prophet in Eretz Yisrael, and his name is Elisha, and he's a miracle worker, in effect. Go to him and ask him, how do I get cured from this tsaras? So he travels to Eretz Yisrael, and he goes to the Navi Elisha, and Navi Elisha tells him that he has to be tevel in the Yarden, which he scoffs at. He says, are the rivers of Damascus, are the rivers of Syria any less beautiful and powerful as the Yarden. But listen, push comes to shove. The guy's desperate, so he goes ahead and to be table into the Yarden, and miraculously he's cured. Now, if you look at the story of how he goes to Elisha, one would think that he goes to Elisha. Elisha is told by his adjutant, Gehazi, Naaman Sarsov Melech Aram is here to see you. One would think that Elisha would come out, give him the courtesy of greeting. After all, he's a very powerful man. Elisha doesn't as much lift his head from the sefer that he was probably learning. And he tells Gehazi, or tells his servant to go ahead and say, go tell him to be toivel in the Yarden. Now, Elisha was not a rude person. And one would think that he would at least give him the courtesy of speaking him to face and telling him what's wrong, what he should do. And he treats him with almost with disdain, with scorn, doesn't even let him in the house, doesn't come out of the house. Why does he do that? The answer is, as Rabbi Sawi said at the beginning, tsaras is a spiritual malady. And one of the maladies, one of the averas for which tsaras comes is gasus haruach, haughtiness, gaiva, arrogance. So the Navi, Al-Pi Ruach HaKodesh, Al-Pi Nevuah, knew that this was Naaman's issue, which is understandable. He's the Sarsov of the Melech Aram. He just had magnificent victories. And so he's sitting on top of the world. His mom is bursting with pride. Elisha says to him, in effect, I'm not even going to go out to see you. You're not even worth that. You want to get well, table in the Yarden. And probably this message hit home to Naaman. I'm Naaman Salah Haram. Why doesn't he go ahead and come to outside and fall Kairim and Mishtachava and say, and he praises him, he doesn't even give me the time of day in effect. That hit home to Naaman. And he realized that I am not God's gift to humanity. And therefore, the Navi doesn't even have to come out to say hello. And then he's table in the Yarden, and then he gets cured. Because the Navi was letting him know, your problem is gaiva. And that's why, in fact, he was cured. And whenever I say over a story or mice in Tanakh like this, or mice with a Navi, I always have to say that Rabbi say, no one knows why this thing is happening to us. This terrible machla. My son, the one in Lakewood, he lives in a small neighborhood. Lakewood is vast, but it's a subsection. I think I know Eitan knows where he lives. Anyone who lives, it's a small little section. There's basically 3 or 4 streets that everybody lives on: Cardinal Court, Robin Court, Regent Drive, Hollywood, and that's the whole neighborhood. Among these 3 or 4 blocks, of which the average age of the inhabitants is their late 30s, 40s to early 50s. They're all basically, middle-aged men. There are 6 families sitting Shiva for people's parents, which are all in the age of 65 to 75. 6 families sitting Shiva in a neighborhood that to walk from beginning to end may take you 15 minutes at the most. and there are 6 people sitting Shiva, 6 families sitting Shiva, and everybody wants to know why, what is it? And everybody says this far, that's far, which are not incorrect, but we still don't know. And that Rabbi says because we don't have a Navi. And therefore, as wonderful as life is in America, we should not feel a sense of completeness and everything is wonderful and there's so much Torah, there's so much Chesed, which is all true. But we're lacking something. We're lacking the Gilui Shechina. We're lacking the presence of the Ribbon Shalom, and now it's even worse. He's even further away from us than we would want. And one last Torah, not from Reb Baruch Sorotzkin, but from his father, Reb Zalman Sorotzkin. Reb Zalman Sorotzkin was a Europe Sharov, a Litvish Sharov. He was the Rav in a city called Lutz. He was known as the Lutzker Rav. The pasuk says that מצורע bodad yeshe michutz lamachaneh mo shavai. The מצורע has to sit bodad. He has to sit bodad by himself, self-quarantine. So, in America, the word is quarantine, it's isolation. You know what the word in Hebrew, when they talk about quarantine, it's either bedidus or bidud. That's the word, and it's a Hebraic word. It's a Torah word. It's a bodad. So they've taken that bidud. A person has to be boded. You don't have to be a genius to make the connection. And that's why there is a big dogesh on the part of many Gedolim, I think, including Reb Chaim Kanievsky, that this is a period of time to be Zohir and Lashon Hara particularly, and to learn Hilchos Shmiras HaLashon. In fact, my wife and I have decided, and in the interim, we learn a sif of Shmiras HaLashon. It's in English. We get it by email. Because the connection of Bodad Yeshe Michutz Lamachaneh Moshavai, and that the word is bidud, you have to be bedidu, you have to be bodad. That's a very, very strong connection. So Reb Zalman Sorotzkin points out, and he says, a person that speaks Lashon Hara is a person that doesn't like people. He doesn't like his neighbor because he makes too much money. He doesn't like this guy because he's too successful. He doesn't like this other person because he drives a nicer car. Whatever it is that people, they don't like other people. They speak Lashon Hara because they don't like the person. And there's a word in English for this, Rabbi Say. And here you can put this into your vocabulary that you learned from me over this year. A misanthrope. A misanthrope is a word that means you don't like people. So a Baal Lashon Hara has this machla. Don't appreciate people. Don't like people. Not kind to people. So he says, you know what his machla is? No more people. Feel what it's like to be by yourself, not to be able to talk to anybody. Remember, Rabbi said, in biblical times, it's not that you could talk on the phone, and that you could not email, and you could not, certainly not Zoom or whatever this is that we're using. You're bodad. You couldn't even have shachas with your family members. They couldn't be in the same house. You're all alone. Now, we all feel this lack of, we can't talk to Chaver, we can't be with them. But imagine, nobody. You're out there in a tent, mechutz lamachaneh moshavai, no wife, no children, no nothing. You know what that says? That tells the person, you see how important people are, and how important society is. In fact, I curiously, Rav Zalman Sorotzkin even stells zu, in Hebrew, he stells it zu, and he says, Kamo Hasipur Robinson Caruso. I don't know if you had in your very, very intense English education, whether you ever read the novel of story of Robinson Crusoe. At any rate, I must admit I didn't either, but at least I Googled it to find out some details of the story. But the bottom line is this guy got stranded, shipwrecked, and he wound up on a desert island all by himself. So Zalman Swartzen says, that's like Robinson Crusoe. The מצורע is like Robinson Crusoe, all by yourself, not another human being. Until another ship got wrecked, and then he got somebody there. But the bottom line is, you didn't appreciate human beings. You didn't appreciate Chaverim when you had them. You didn't appreciate society when you had them. And therefore now, see what it is not to have any people. And that, Rabbi Isai, is the lesson of Bodad Yeshe Michutz Lamachane Mashavai, and that we have to appreciate. Again, we're not Bodad Mamish, but I'm sure all of us miss the camaraderie and the chaverschaft of being in the yeshiva, being able to talk to people, schmooze with people, be with people. All that is lacking, and we have to be making cheshbon hanefesh. What have been doing wrong, and how can we improve? And hopefully, if this is more people to do tshuva and to improve their ways, the Rebbeinu should end this terrible machla b'mheira mamish. So with that, Rabbi said, that's the end of this Chumash year. I appreciate all of you that came to participate, all 30-something of you. I really appreciate it. It's much more inspiring to me to speak to a lot of people than just to speak to just a few people. As I mentioned, Moshe Chaim will send out a new sheet for Sunday. But most importantly, Rabbi Isai, everybody should have a Ramban al HaTorah with them for this Sunday. Be it the classic, the old Shavel Ramban al HaTorah. There are many different. I have a set called Paris TV Yerushalayim or TV Yerushalayim. And even worse comes to worse, everybody I'm sure has a Mikros Gedolos, and their Mikros Gedolos, there's the Ramban al HaTorah. And Mitzvah Hashem, that's what we will learn on Sunday at 12:15 again. And then in Mitzvah Hashem, on Monday, Rabbi Isai, we will have really the first real shir on the sugya of Cholov, Akum, Chol Shechov Yisrael, Akum Ve'en Yisrael Ro'ehu. We'll really get into the sugya